Lake Iliamna, 77 miles long, 1,000 feet deep, connected to the open ocean by a river wide enough for sharks and whales to swim through. The people who've lived on its shores for thousands of years don't swim in it. They don't let their children near the water after dark, and they have a word for the thing that lives at the bottom, a word that roughly translates to the creature that bites holes in boats. Pilots have seen them from the air, dozens at a time, each one as long as a plane's wingspan, moving in formation beneath the surface. Fishermen have pulled up steel gear built for 300-pound halibut, bent, snapped, and dragged across the lake floor by something that overpowered it. Moose hunters watched a flock of swans get dragged underwater one by something sitting directly beneath their boat that they'd mistaken for sunken logs. The thing had eyes the size of soccer balls. People have gone missing on this lake. Boats have come back empty.
I absolutely knew there was something in this lake. The lines were like the animal had gone in there and fought and rolled and fought and rolled.
And every serious person who's gone looking for answers has come back with the same thing. Not proof, but enough to stop laughing. Here's the first thing you need to understand about this lake, because it changes everything. Iliamna is not landlocked. It connects directly to the Bering Sea through the Kvichak River, a wide, deep channel that runs 120 kilometers to the open Pacific. Marine animals use it. Harbor seals live full-time in the lake, hundreds of miles from salt water. Beluga whales have been spotted in the river system. Ocean creatures swimming into a freshwater lake and staying. If seals and belugas can get in, what else swam up that river and never left? Add the food supply. 5 to 8 million adult sockeye salmon return to this lake every single year, the largest sockeye run on Earth. Enough to keep a population of large predators fed forever without anyone noticing a dent in the numbers. And then add the thing that makes this lake almost perfectly designed to hide whatever's in it. Below a certain depth, the cold water creates a layer where visibility drops to zero and sonar stops working properly. You could be floating in a boat on a calm surface, looking down into water that looks empty, while something the size of your boat sits 50 feet below you, invisible, a direct highway to the ocean, unlimited food, and a built-in hiding place that beats every tool we have. For thousands of years, the people who lived here tried to warn anyone who'd listen. The Dena'ina, Athabaskan, and Central Yupik peoples didn't treat this as a legend. They treated it the way you'd treat a bear on a trail. Real. Dangerous. Something you teach your children about before they go near the water. The name Iliamna itself comes from it. According to the Yupik village of Igyugig, the word means a great blackfish that bites holes in the kayaks of bad natives. Not a campfire story, a warning baked into the name of the lake itself. The Tlingit people had their own name for it, Gonakadet, a massive water creature described in their oral tradition with the same behavioral traits: hunts from below, circles boats, takes prey whole. The Aleut called it the Jig-Ik-Nak. Different peoples, different languages, separated by hundreds of miles of coastline, all describing the same animal in the same lake. Elders taught rules. When the water turns wrong, unusual ripples on a calm surface, fish fleeing an area all at once, you leave. You don't look. You don't investigate. You get off the water. One elder said it plainly. Our people learned this through loss. They described specific behaviors. The creatures hunt in packs. They circle boats. They strike from below. They move to shallow water at dawn and dusk. They're drawn to struggling prey, and they create wakes strong enough to swamp small boats. Russian fur traders arrived in the 1700s and laughed at all of it. A few years later, their own journals told a different story. Boats struck hard enough to throw men overboard. Bodies never found. Nets shredded by something that shouldn't exist in a lake. The Russians stopped laughing and started carrying weapons on the water. Not for bears, but for whatever was underneath. The locals had been saying it for centuries. Then, in 1942, two outsiders saw it from the air, and the world had to deal with it. Babe Allsworth, a bush pilot with thousands of flight hours. Bill Hammersley, a government wildlife agent conducting fish surveys. Neither man had any interest in monsters. On a clear day over deep water, they looked down and saw more than a dozen large animals beneath the surface, each one roughly the wingspan of their plane, 25 to 30 feet. metallic backs catching sunlight, moving in formation like a hunting pod. Their report broke the silence. Other pilots started coming forward. In 1977, pilot Tim Laporte saw two massive shapes creating wakes beneath the surface. He'd flown over whales in the ocean. He said flatly, these were not whales. Wrong shape, wrong movement, and they were in fresh water 77 miles from the sea. Then, in 1988, it happened in front of 17 witnesses at once, a community gathering on the shore, multiple creatures surfacing and diving 200 yards out, 17 people, different ages, different backgrounds, all describing animals 25 to 40 feet long. When 17 people see the same thing at the same time, you can't call it a mistake, but everything so far is just eyes and words. No physical evidence, no proof you can hold in your hands. That changed in 2017. Mark Stigar is a retired Army colonel, former Chief Aviation Officer for the Alaska Army National Guard, bachelor's and master's degrees in wildlife biology. He owns a cabin on Iliamna, and for years he heard the stories and smiled politely. Then a marine biologist named Bruce Wright handed him commercial halibut longline gear and told him to fish the deep water. This is equipment built for the ocean floor. Heavy hooks, steel hardware, a 38-pound anchor. It's designed to hold 10-foot sleeper sharks and halibut over 300 pounds without giving an inch. Stigar set it at 100 feet, 14 hooks, each baited with a sockeye head. For several summers, nothing touched it. Then one morning in 2017, he went to check his line and everything he thought he knew about the lake fell apart. The anchor had been dragged 50 yards. The line was tangled running the wrong direction. Gangans were severed clean. Metal snaps bent in different directions and crushed together. Something had hit that rig with enough force to overpower gear that holds ocean predators 3 times the size of a grown man. Stigar knows what seal damage looks like. He knows what halibut damage looks like. He has 2 degrees in wildlife biology. This was neither. He coiled the line, packed the gear away, never said it again. Not because he was scared, but because he changed his mind about what was down there, and he didn't want to hurt it. This could be the oldest creature on the planet, he said. I'm not going to try to catch it anymore. So, what is it? For years, the best theory was the Pacific sleeper shark, Somniosus pacificus. Deep water, cold water, grows past 20 feet, possibly 30. Lives over 200 years, handles fresh water, has been found far inland in other river systems. In 2012, one was filmed alive in a brackish lagoon in King Cove, Alaska, real footage, proving they survive outside the ocean. Wright pushed the sleeper shark theory for years. Size fit, depth fit, temperature fit. Others have proposed white sturgeon, a massive ancient fish that can exceed 20 feet and has been documented in Alaska river systems. The size is plausible. But white sturgeon don't hunt in packs, don't strike at boats, and don't create the coordinated hunting behavior every serious witness has described. The theory gets considered and set aside. Then the eyewitness description started pulling Wright in a different direction. Sleeper sharks don't hunt in packs. They don't surface in daylight. They don't herd prey in coordinated formation. And the witnesses Wright trusted most, the ones with training, the ones with nothing to gain, kept describing something that didn't look like a shark. Long body, broad, flat head, eyes far too large for any shark species. They described something that looked like a giant northern pike. Pike are ambush predators. They hunt in low light. They're drawn to struggling prey. They work in loose groups around concentrated food. They already live in Alaska. The largest pike ever recorded was about 5 feet. Witnesses at Iliamna describe animals 10 times that length. Could a population of pike, sealed in a lake with unlimited salmon for thousands of years, no fishing pressure, and nothing above them in the food chain, grow to a size no pike has reached in recorded history? Nobody knows. That's the honest answer. Anyone giving you a confident one is guessing. The question was compelling enough that Animal Planet's River Monsters sent Jeremy Wade to investigate. He's the kind of man who catches 6-foot Goliath tigerfish and calls it a normal Tuesday. He left Lake Iliamna without a definitive answer, which, if you know anything about that show, tells you everything. But here's what makes all of this worse than a monster mystery. Whatever is in this lake is eating the seals, and the seals can't leave. In October 2024, a team from Florida Atlantic University confirmed something that had been suspected for decades. The harbor seals of Lake Iliamna, all 400 of them, are genetically isolated from the entire Pacific Ocean. They don't leave the lake. They don't breed with outside populations. Their DNA has drifted so far from every other harbor seal on Earth that they're now one of only 5 freshwater seal populations in the Northern Hemisphere. 400 seals, locked in a lake, with something that hunts in packs and drags its prey under from below. And right now, the proposed Pebble Mine, a massive open-pit copper and gold operation near Lake Clark National Park, is threatening to poison the watershed that feeds this entire system. If whatever lives in Iliamna is real, we may destroy it before we ever find out what it is. In 1980, the Anchorage Daily News offered $100,000 for proof. 46 years later, the money hasn't moved. The creature hasn't surfaced, and every instrument we've pointed at that water has come back with the same answer. Something is there, and we can't see it clearly enough to name it. Bruce Wright has spent decades studying the things that sit at the top of food chains. He's tagged great whites, he's tracked grizzlies across tundra, he's published papers on apex predators most people will never encounter. He went to Lake Iliamna as a scientist who doesn't believe in monsters. He came back as a scientist who doesn't use that word anymore. Not because he found proof, because he found enough. The Dena'ina knew it was there. The Yupik named the lake after it. The Tlingit called it Gonakadet. The Russians learned the hard way. The bush pilots saw it from the air. A retired colonel felt it bend his steel. A shark scientist stopped being a skeptic. The only people who still don't believe are the ones who've never been on the water.